The moment my ex-wife laughed at me in front of everyone, I felt the same old humiliation I had carried for 8 years come rushing back. She looked at my simple suit, smiled at the expensive people surrounding her, and made sure everyone heard her joke. What she didn't know was that the quiet man standing across from her was no longer the broken husband she had left behind. He had built something worth billions. But that night, I would discover that becoming rich had changed my life far less than learning to forgive. Before we continue, if you believe people deserve kindness, second chances, and the opportunity to rebuild their lives after heartbreak, please like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, leave a comment, and subscribe to Kindness Thread. Your support helps us bring more stories of hope and second chances. 8 years earlier, my name was Daniel Carter, and I was 32 years old, working 2 jobs while trying to keep my marriage alive. I wasn't poor because I was lazy. I was struggling because every opportunity seemed to disappear just when I needed it most. I worked during the day at a small technology company and delivered food at night. My wife, Victoria, had grown tired of waiting for my life to improve. She wanted luxury, security, vacations, and a husband who could walk into a room and command attention. I wanted to build something slowly and honestly. Those 2 dreams eventually became impossible to reconcile. Our divorce wasn't dramatic in the beginning. There were no screaming matches or broken furniture. There was simply silence. The kind of silence that grows between 2 people who have stopped believing the other person can change. Victoria left with most of our savings and a clear belief that she was making the right decision. I walked out of the courthouse with 1 suitcase, an old laptop, and almost nothing else. That night, I sat alone in a tiny apartment above a laundromat. The washing machines downstairs vibrated through the floor while rain tapped against the window. I remember staring at my laptop for hours, wondering whether my life had already passed me by. But then something inside me changed. I stopped asking why Victoria had left and started asking what I could do with the life I still had. For the next several years, I worked relentlessly. During the day, I built software solutions for small businesses. At night, I studied markets, technology, and entrepreneurship. There were months when I had barely enough money for groceries. There were investors who laughed at my ideas and told me I was dreaming too big. One even told me that a man who couldn't save his own marriage had no business trying to build a company. That sentence stayed with me. Not because it was true, but because it showed me exactly what I never wanted to become, someone who measured another person's worth by their worst moment. Eventually, my little software project became a company. Then that company became a platform used by thousands of businesses. Investors who once ignored my emails began calling me. Within a few years, the company expanded internationally. I became wealthy almost by accident, but I never forgot the man sitting alone above that laundromat. I still wore ordinary clothes. I still drove an older car. I still visited the same coffee shop where I used to count coins before ordering breakfast. Money had changed what I could buy, but it hadn't changed who I wanted to be. Then came the school reunion. I almost didn't attend. I had received the invitation several times, but I had no desire to reopen old memories. Eventually, an old classmate convinced me. The reunion was being held at an elegant hotel where former classmates had gathered to celebrate the lives they had built since graduation. When I walked through the ballroom doors, I recognized familiar faces everywhere. Some people had aged gracefully. Others had changed completely. A few stared at me for several seconds before realizing who I was. Then I saw Victoria. She was standing near the center of the room wearing an expensive designer dress, surrounded by people she clearly wanted to impress. Her new husband stood beside her, talking proudly about his investments. Victoria noticed me. Her eyes traveled from my shoes to my simple navy suit, and a smile slowly appeared on her face. She walked over with several friends behind her. Instead of greeting me warmly, she looked around and made a joke about how some people apparently hadn't progressed since graduation. A few people laughed. Then she reminded everyone that I had once struggled to pay rent and suggested that perhaps I had come to the reunion hoping to impress people with a cheap suit. The laughter grew louder. For a moment, I felt 8 years disappear. I was back in that tiny apartment, staring at a ceiling I couldn't afford to repair. But this time, I didn't feel ashamed. I simply smiled. Victoria expected me to become defensive. Instead, I calmly told her that she was right about one thing: I hadn't changed the way she expected. I hadn't become someone who needed expensive clothes or applause to feel important. Then the room suddenly became quiet. The hotel manager approached me, followed by the company's chief financial officer. They had been waiting for me because I was the anonymous sponsor of the entire reunion. Victoria's smile disappeared. The manager thanked me publicly for covering the venue, catering, and scholarship fund established for former classmates who were struggling financially. Then my CFO accidentally revealed what most people in the room didn't know. The technology company I had founded had recently crossed a valuation of several $billion. Silence. Victoria stared at me as if she were seeing a stranger. But I didn't enjoy her embarrassment. Instead, I looked around the room at the people who had laughed and remembered something important. Success isn't revenge. Real success is reaching a place where the people who once hurt you no longer have the power to determine how you feel. Victoria eventually approached me alone. Her expression was completely different. There was regret in her eyes, but I could also see fear. She apologized for the way she had treated me and admitted that she had judged my future by my past. I accepted her apology. Not because I wanted her back. Not because I needed her approval. I accepted it because I had spent 8 years carrying anger that no longer belonged in my life. Before leaving, I handed the reunion organizer an envelope containing another donation. It was enough to fund scholarships for several students for years. Victoria watched quietly. She finally understood that the biggest thing I had gained wasn't billions of dollars. It was peace. Years ago, she had walked away because she believed I had nothing to offer. Tonight, I walked away knowing that I didn't need to prove anything to anyone. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who needs a second chance, and subscribe to Kindness Thread. Sometimes the person everyone overlooks is quietly becoming someone extraordinary. And before the story ends, comment "second chances" if you believe your past should never be allowed to define your future. Daniel never returned to that ballroom to seek revenge. He returned as someone who had learned that heartbreak can either harden your heart or strengthen it. He chose strength. And perhaps that was the real fortune he discovered, not the billions in his bank account, but the ability to look at the people who once broke him and choose kindness anyway. Because sometimes life doesn't give you a second chance by changing your past. Sometimes it gives you a second chance by showing you how far you've come.